There's a lot of people that I would say that they really have this dream, but they get like a brick wall. Mm-hmm. What kind of encouragement would you give to someone who's struggling with the brick walls?
I'd say it's a perspective shift. A brick wall is really running into the face of a step. So it's like just like a staircase, you know, it's a wall followed by a step up.
Yeah.
And not to be overly cliche, but I use that analogy a lot for myself, is that obstacles are opportunities to learn. And when you learn, you grow. And when you grow, you can go up, you know, to the next level, the next step.
How's it going, Tannon?
It's going.
So I have not cut your hair in a while, but you let me cut your hair a lot when I was learning to cut hair, which is pretty fun to have you while I'm like actually a licensed professional now and not a student.
In fact, the guy who normally cuts my hair now went to school with you, so.
That's so fun. Yeah. Before we get into the story, what kind of haircut are you looking for?
Well, if you remember my usual, you know.
Yeah, so usually we kind of like brought it pretty close. We did a couple different things. You did like a skin fade before. Are you still doing the fade? Okay, skin fade, and then just probably taking this down somewhere in there.
Yeah, just like some like just be able to play with some stuff. But
something like that.
Again, it's been a couple months since I've had a haircut. I've been saving it just for this occasion. So
nice. I'm excited.
Lots of room to play.
Sweet. So now, tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Yeah, so I live like an hour away from here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And what I do is a lot of things, but you could kind of most easily summarize it's like being a professional neighbor. So I have a nonprofit called Wildheart that my wife and I started in 2016. Or 2017 rather. And then, you know, a lot of that looks just like serving our community through beautification projects. And then in 2018, we also started a coffee roasting company called Colina, which Colina is Spanish for the hill. That's the name of our neighborhood, Allison Hill. So it's like a way to raise awareness of our story, the things that we're doing. And then it's always nice when, if you're going to support something, that you get something in the process. And I know a lot of people who love coffee, very few people who don't love it. So that's been another thing that we do. And of course, I mean, I'm a dad. I got 3 little girls. I've been married for 12 years. And that's the doing part of who I am for sure.
No, that's super fun. And what kind of got you started, like, because you're not from Harrisburg. What brought you to Harrisburg?
No. So I moved here actually from Oklahoma in 2013 to work with a friend of mine. And he had like a global ministry, and we came up here to actually work and more or less like help put together some of the administrative structure. And about a year and a half into all that, he ended up leaving and moving to California. And so it's like quite the crazy transition because every person that we knew at the time also was making the same decision to leave. So we were like total transplants, didn't really know anyone or anything, but we really felt like we were supposed to stay, so we did. Which if you've ever been in that situation, it definitely sounds way cooler than it feels because it's a pretty unnerving thing when you're like, I literally have no reason why we're staying here. It's just like, I have a feeling, you know? And so we spent about a year and a half just connecting with our neighbors at the time, which the hill where I live is a pretty rough area. It's inner city Harrisburg, super diverse. A lot of issues with poverty, with crime, a lot of single mothers. It's just an area of great need. And in that year and a half, we just spent time more than just like looking at statistics and hearing stories from people on the outside. It was just like getting to know our neighbors from the inside. So a lot of meals. That's probably the easiest way. I tell people that was a season where there's a lot of prayer and a lot of parties. So we just like connected, hung out, got to know people, and hear the story from their side of the table, and just learned in the middle of that whole process there was an opportunity to do a lot of good. So that's when we actually started our nonprofit. And it was more or less in response to our neighbors saying, hey, could you help us? And, you know, rather than getting busy just doing what we thought needed to happen, we asked them, well, how? Like, what is it that we can do? And so never in a million years would I have chosen what they shared in those conversations. But the big essence of it was like, could you, like, you know, we know where to get food, we know where to get help with housing, we know where to get clothes, we know where to get assistance with our bills. There's like lots of services in the area, but the one thing that just doesn't change that we want help with is our environment, you know, the condition of our community. And the Hill, in a nutshell, a lot of the stats that I have off the top of my head are a little bit dated, but at least within the last decade, the Hill was like the 25th most dangerous city in the United States, top 10 murder capital in the U.S.
Yeah.
Like the percentage of single mothers in our neighborhood per other American neighborhoods was just like staggering. But a lot of that was due to the blight. It's just like the area within our neighborhood. There's 1 square mile is our neighborhood, so it's a small area, but there's a lot of people. There's like over 800 abandoned buildings.
Wow.
So it's like crazy that we're super densely populated, but there's really hardly anywhere to live, and the community itself was kind of just falling apart. So when our neighbors were like, "Can you help with that?" It wasn't this like, "Yeah, we could totally do that." It was just like, "Well, I don't know. I guess we can try." So that's actually how we got started. So it was just real simple cleanups. So we did like our first big cleanup, which was kind of quite the learning experience. Because again, so I moved here from Oklahoma, and I didn't know the first thing really about city life and how, in general, cities are more, probably what's the best way to put it, like they're more regulated. you know? So like where I come from, it's like you see a mess, you just go clean it up. Like it's as simple as that. But in this, it was like, we decided to clean up the block around our house. And within 48 hours, I was getting called, actually the Department of Public Works showed up, which I'd never even heard of a Department of Public Works. And they're like, "Who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing? What's your plan?" It's like, and I was like, "Holy moly! Like, what's going on?" And I learned
we're just trying to clean up a mess.
I'm like, what? Like, and I remember they were like, "What are you trying to do?" And I was like, "I'm just trying to clean up the alley behind my house."
Yeah.
Well, why? I was like, well, because it looks pretty bad. Like somebody's got to do something. Yeah. To me, it was like really simple and innocent, and but we learned, through that conversation, like there's a process by which you do things and permissions and permits and all those things. But those guys took a huge risk on us, like, and totally like forgave my, my innocence, and we're like, well, let's help you out. And so within 3 weeks, we worked with the Department of Public Works, and we ended up removing 120,000 pounds of trash just by walking a circle around my house. So that's kind of like the beginning of our story, and how we began was just what I would say is, instead of looking around for somebody else to solve a problem, realizing our neighbors were asking for help and that we can do something about it. We didn't necessarily have to be experts or professionals or have some crazy grand strategy. We just needed to be available. And so we went for it.
Yeah. And like through that process, like that was a starting point, like to kind of jump forward, and we'll kind of fill in a little bit in the middle, but like now you guys are doing stuff with, I saw stuff online about your doing some farming stuff, which is crazy. You're doing some stuff with, you're continuing the cleanup stuff like that, and kind of bringing other people into the project. But also, what I always think is really cool is that a lot of things you do are always, like, it started around the neighbors, and it continues to be the neighborhood that steps up. But tell us a little bit about how it kind of got from this little thing to kind of getting connected with these different places.
Yeah, I think you could probably summarize where we are as purely the result of just persevering. Mostly because, like, so when we first got started, I was thinking, especially for people who have faith, like, who wouldn't want to be a part of coming and like serving your neighbor, especially in an area of great need. And I realized that I kind of ran into the been there, done that, bought the t-shirt crowd. And that was a little, demoralizing, to be honest with you, because I'm like, I don't understand why this is such a hard concept. Like, the neighbors are asking for help, and all you want to do is say, we've already tried that before. It's like, well, the need's there, so like, let's do something about it. So, how we got to where we are now, I think is instead of just letting like our experience at the beginning, where it was kind of like people not really being eager to jump in and help, and maybe being more skeptical. Like, it was almost like we had to provide proof of concept. So it's like, we got started, and like I shared, we removed over 100,000 pounds of trash in those first 3 weeks, and then because we were able to capture not just like the attention, but the support of the neighbors in that process, and kind of share that story with individuals who are probably skeptical at the beginning. It kind of like inclined people to be like, well, maybe we should give it a second chance. And, I remember when we first got going, it was like we ran into so many people too who were like so excited, and they're like, man, like, you could get grants, or you could have businesses come and help you, or you could, you could get churches to come. It's like everyone's like so excited about all these opportunities that they thought would be, wide open doors.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, man, those first like 3-4 years sucked.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like everywhere I went, I'd sit down in a conversation and I'd tell them about like what we were doing and the results that we were seeing. And it was either like one of two responses for the most part. Either the whole like, oh, well, yeah, we used to do that, but we don't really do things like that anymore. Or kind of like, yeah.
That's nice.
That's nice. Yeah. It's kind of like, really like, what are you talking about? Like, I think it's because, and that was actually whenever I started to change almost how I shared like our story with people. Is I was like, we don't do like cute little cleanups, like, and I think that's probably like what people thought. It's like, oh, like, that's nice of you. That's really sweet. And I was just like, no, like we're going into like abandoned lots, and we're removing, from one property, like 40,000 pounds of trash, and people are able to now see the lot, and they're buying these lots, and they're building community gardens now. Like, that's what we're doing. Like, it's not just like walking around on the streets and putting a piece of trash into a trash bag, And so really like what it became was this effort on our part to really learn how to tell our story and share our story.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of like how it grew. Was I'm one of those guys. I'm one of those weird people. When people tell you that you can't do something, you just get fired up. And you're like, I'm about to prove you wrong.
Yeah, I'm there.
So not everybody works that way, you know. But for me, it was just like when I started realizing that there was a lot of people thinking like this is never going to work. I was just like, well, I'm going to prove them wrong. And it wasn't about proving them wrong that like the work that we were doing isn't going to work. It was just that I could ever convince people the worthiness of what we were doing.
Yeah.
Boy, I got like a little friar monk cut going on.
Just for a second.
Just for a second there. So anyways, it was just like, okay, well, I'm going to, and I realized too, a lot of it was like people weren't really connected with the neighborhood, So it's like maybe they thought the work that we were doing was good, but it's like, why should I give a crap about Allison Hill, Or maybe more to the point, there were some individuals who probably just felt like the Hill in general is a hopeless situation. So, I mean, it's nice what you're doing, but regardless of your efforts, it's always going to be that way. And so, we don't want to devote too much time or resource to what you're doing because it's probably not going to have an impact long term anyway. So it's like, just ran into a bunch of skeptics. So,
well, and they didn't see something that I've noticed about you is that you see the value in people, not in kind of scenarios or ideas.
Yeah.
And so when you're looking at Allison Hill, you're looking at all the people there.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, like there's actually some great neighbors here that, people look at the overall neighborhood and there's always hooligans that are going to make the place seem terrible. But there's also people that are just in situations that are kind of out of their control.
Yeah.
And
I would just say that, like, to your point, there's hooligans everywhere. This is just like a funny side story, and I don't want to throw shade on any part of our beautiful Commonwealth here, but I remember we had this like really tragic situation happen inside the community, and it started this really interesting dialogue around sex offenders.
Okay.
And everyone's like trying to find out like where are all these sex offenders inside of our community, and to your point, so we find out that people kind of expect a community like ours to be like where all these terrible people live. It's just like these weird like boogeyman stories, right, that we create. Yeah. And somebody did their due diligence and wanted to find out, like, in our area, not just our neighborhood, but in our area, like, what's the highest concentration of sex offenders. And it was actually on the other side of the river in the most affluent neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, ooh, gotcha. It was like, that doesn't fit the narrative, does it? So it's like, everybody's got different problems no matter where you live. They all look different. It's kind of like we're all sinners. We just sin differently kind of thing. And so I think that I for the reason why I'm bringing that up is it's kind of always been like a thing for me when people kind of want to look down their nose at the community that I live in. I'm kind of like, you got your own issues, and you probably just don't know about it because you're not willing to look. Some people their things are more easy to see, and others are not. To the point of that story. So
some people can hide so much their own stuff that they don't even, like you said, they don't even see it.
Yeah, I mean, and we do that to ourselves. You can take that down a whole philosophical tunnel there for a second. Yeah. It's like we always. I think that's why Jesus is all saying like, hey, before you poke out the speck in your friend's eye, like what about the log in your own?
Yeah.
We tend to overlook things like that. So anyways, I digress. But
no, that's good, man. And so through kind of a lot of this, you started out in a ministry when you came here. Actually, really cool. I don't know if you remember this, but you were a big part of me kind of coming to my faith in a real way as an adult was when you came to my church and did a worship set. And it was really the Lord kind of working through the whole thing. It's cool how God kind of meets us in our crazy stuff. Like everyone's got our stuff, like you said. And it was just kind of right place, right time. But through you,
you were running sound, right?
Yeah, I was running
just
sound.
Like a burn set. I just remember there was a lot of guys from the local rehab that were there. And gosh, when was it? It was like middle of the night. I don't even remember. Or it was more like in the evening.
Yeah, it was like a late evening thing. And
that's funny. I remember it.
Yeah, and so through something simple like obedience like that, like you helped me through the trajectory of a totally different thing that you weren't even going for.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see kind of the transition. And I remember being at one of the summer projects and being in that lot, one of those big lots that you're just like, man, there's a lot of like stinky mattresses with a lot of crazy stuff and some crazy, things because it just became a dumping ground.
Yep.
That now is like, it's beautiful, these different places. But I'm sure also if you go back to some of those places, they turn back into dumping grounds.
Sometimes, yeah.
How do you kind of take that and still see the progress while you're also seeing some things kind of return?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so when we first got started, again, like so much of what we do, it's like we've been coached by our neighbors how to succeed, which I think is kind of hilarious. It's very different than what I would say a lot of individuals would do when they want to like solve a problem. They kind of just come in and then they throw something at it, see if it works.
Yeah.
And then if it doesn't, they themselves go back to the drawing table. Where in our scenario, it's like the neighbors are like, here's a problem, help us fix it. So we start doing it. And then like literally as we're doing it, they're like, oh, you better have a plan to come back here because if you don't, it's going to go right back to the way that it was.
Yeah.
And, for me, it was just like, oh, I'm glad you said that because, I obviously have never done it before. So I don't know what the experience is like. And they're like, oh, yeah, like all this is going to be a waste of your time if you guys don't make a plan. So we're almost immediately, we put into place like, okay, any area that we clean, which again, our very first year, all it was a circle around our house. So it's pretty easy to keep an eye on things. But we planned and organized for us to be out there at least once a month, cleaning things up. And then as our impact grew and we started doing more inside the community, which like now, we're doing 114 blocks of the city is what we take care of. So now, like it grew, so we started doing, more frequent cleanups. We were doing them bi-weekly, and we would have like 20 or 30 people come. And then now it's like we're doing a monthly, and at each one of our monthly cleanups, we're easily like 100 or more people coming. Wow. It's just crazy, and it's like again, it's neighbors inside it's people inside of our neighborhood, it's people outside of our neighborhood, but it's still inside the city, and then people who like are nowhere near here. I mean, like I think so far like. Probably the group that's traveled the furthest just to be a part of what we're doing came all the way from Alaska. So.
Oh, dang. It's pretty far.
So obviously we've grown in communicating the message of the worthiness, if you will, of what we're doing. For sure. That people would want to fly all the way from Alaska to be a part of it. But yeah, so it's been fun to see how it's grown and who's been involved in that growth too. But when we come to an area that we've cleaned and maybe it went backwards. Very rarely would I say we see like a full regression where it's like we cleaned it and it goes right exactly back to the way it was. It'd be like you can see it starting to slip.
Yeah.
We've noticed that a lot of it, we've learned, how do I say it? It's like we've learned that not just relationship with people, but relationship with spaces is a big part of the experience inside the community. So it's like some areas, no one has formed any sort of relationship with a space because it's always been this one way. So for instance, you know, like one of those lots I'm sure that you went on, you know, it's always been that way for some people. And in our neighborhood, there's definitely like people who have lived there their whole life, but there's also a whole lot of like transient members of the community who are maybe only there for a few years, either like they're passing through or whatever, you know, whatever the reason is. And so, you know, people don't form any like strong bonds or memories or connections to these areas other than like, I don't ever want to go over there. So we go and we clean up a spot and there's no connection to that space other than it's open now. And so, you know, for somebody who's unfamiliar of our process and what we're trying to go for, they're like, okay, so I guess there's just more space for me to dump more trash now. You know, it's like you definitely have that, like because like, oh, that's where we dump trash. That's how I've always experienced that spot.
Just like if we would go to a trash or recycling place, that's where we go, and that's where they go.
And it's kind of like, you know, and like sure, like you can never like broad stroke the whole thing. Sure, there's some bad actors out there who they know exactly what they're doing, and then there's other people like I honestly think it's just like, oh, like that's just what we do in that space, and they're not from the area, so they don't know. You know, it's like I just moved here. I guess that's where we all go dump our stuff if we can't get rid of it. So you have like the educational piece there, which is like connecting with the neighbors who are immediately around those spots. And that's what we've learned over time is we have to involve them in the outcome of the place. Cause it's like, okay, so we cleaned it, but now what? And so some of those spaces, it's funny. It's like, you know, maybe I think it should be used in a different way because I think it'd be a more cool or like, you know, sexy vision, if you will, you know, which is like everybody tries to do, right? But for some of my neighbors, they're just like, well, I don't know where to park my car. Can I just park my car in that? I'm like, okay, that's not like really cool. That's not going to make headlines, but if you want to park your car there, sure. But what that does...
Wildheart created a parking lot.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, but what that does is like, now the space that was formerly, you know, a blight and was unused now has a function. And because it has a function, it will be protected. And it's like, that's kind of like what we learned. It's like, oh, how do we involve the neighbors in the long-term protection of that space? So some of it has been like cool stories where we've like built a whole bunch of raised beds and had community gardens. Some of it's as boring as a parking lot. And it's kind of like everything in between, you know? But one thing that we've always seen in those spaces is whatever the outcome, beauty has to be a part of it for it to really feel like it's turned a new leaf. And so often in those lots, you'll see us planting flowers or scattering wildflower seeds or something, you know, in order to make it to where it sticks. And people understand like, okay, it's not going backwards. There's an opportunity for this space to have new life and new meaning. So.
I remember one time when I was over there a little more often, there was this lot that was open and they were like, we want to create a green space here that people can sit and read and whatever. And I remember your neighbors or you guys being like, but we want to build like a basketball court where people will actually do something. I don't know what, you know, whatever came of that, but like the city didn't really realize like the importance of like meeting the needs of the community. Yeah.
And I think that it's like, that's kind of like where a part of our work, I guess, if you will, has been like reconnecting local government to the community. And I don't want to like overly play that because like what that's looked like is, you know, when we host events, we'll invite like local officials to come and because it gives us an opportunity to connect neighbors to those individuals, share like what life is like. And, but yeah, it was like, we would have like these really weird things where like local government would be like, oh, we're so excited just to plant a park bench in that big grassy lot now so that people can sit and enjoy themselves. I'm like, you're kidding, right? Like nobody in my neighborhood wants to just go sit in an empty lot by themselves. Like this is not that type of a neighborhood, you know? So it is kind of funny. And I think that, again, like the only reason why I could even participate in those conversations is because of relationship with the community. And so you start seeing too, like I think it points to like a bigger thing of the importance of local government making time to connect with residents. And again, like, so I'm in a ministry and I would have never thought that would be something necessarily that is like part of what I do to serve my community, but like it's a need. Like I see the symptoms of a broken relationship there. And if it's something that I can do to serve the community by building that bridge, then that's what I'll do. And in essence, like that's our mission statement is building bridges to transform communities. And I think what I like about how general that is you start realizing how many issues we face in our lives is just because we're not connected to the right people or the right solutions or the right resources, in general. So it's kind of been like, okay, well, how do I bring all my worlds together in order for everything to kind of like everybody benefits in this scenario?
Mm-hmm. No, that's really cool. And just what I'm kind of hearing like a theme for what you guys like kind of have gone through is mostly just perseverance and like persistence through the questions and the people that don't kind of believe in your vision.
Sure.
And there's a lot of people that I would say that struggle, that don't have the same mentality as you, in a way that like they really have this dream that they want to see come through, and they really feel like that either that it's their passion or their calling to do.
Yeah.
But they get like a brick wall.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, even starting something like this podcast, this video stuff, I've been dreaming about for a long time, and it took a long time for it to become what it is. But what kind of encouragement would you give to someone who's struggling with the brick walls?
I'd say it's a perspective shift. A brick wall is really running into the face of a step. So it's like just like a staircase. It's a wall followed by a step up.
Yeah.
And not to be overly cliche, but I use that analogy a lot for myself. Is that obstacles are opportunities to learn, and when you learn, you grow, and when you grow, you can go up, to the next level, the next step, or whatever. And so I think that. Some of my experience, even with what we're doing in Harrisburg, has kind of been this process of like, you have to be willing to stand in the presence of naysayers and believe your dream. And if you can't, then you're not ready to do your dream. Like if you find yourself consumed with doubt and anxiety and you're paralyzed by fear, then you just need to take time to go back to the drawing board, prepare yourself until you believe in your dream so much that it doesn't matter what people think about it. And I would maybe like try to be more delicate about how I say that. Like, you always want to try to keep an open ear, okay? Like, it's like when you're surrounded by counsel and wisdom, you're only going to benefit. But if the only counsel and wisdom you're getting is naysayers, find some new friends. Find people who are willing to like jump in the trenches and be like, hey, cool idea. Like, how can I help you get there? Because maybe you can't get there right now, And I think that like that is like absolutely important. Like, our ability to really fulfill our dreams, I think, is accelerated and becomes more accessible and attainable when we do it in the context of community, when we're not just trying to do it our own. Because at the end of the day, if we all took pause and thought critically about our dream is to impact communities. Like, so you have a barbershop. Your barbershop only works if you're connected to the community. That's what clients are and customers, Exactly. And like everybody who has some cool, like life-changing idea, the idea is around people, it's around how do I impact people? Even if you're like in the tech world, you're trying to improve a process because that process improves a person's life or a person's experience or something. So I think that oftentimes when we go after the whole dream thing, we isolate ourselves. And in that isolation, it like really slows down the process of being good at executing our dream. And oftentimes too, our dreams just totally change the way that they look as we mature. Your dream will change because you change in the process. And embracing that too, I think, is just so necessary to position yourself to see those things come to pass. I mean, again, I'll just make this point. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, whenever I moved to Harrisburg, if my dream was to be out picking up, nasty moldy mattresses and dirty diapers that have been baking in the sun and dead animal carcasses and, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
I would have literally been like, you're insane.
No way.
Like, no way. Yeah. But like what the dream was in my heart was, I'm always very inspired by this passage of scripture when Jesus says, the greatest among you will be the servant of all.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but like for me, like I like to win. That's like, and I know that some people like could care less, and I'm not like the most competitive like I'm okay if I don't win something, but of course I would prefer to win.
For sure.
And so whenever I like read that scripture, I like picture Jesus kind of being like, if you want to win, this is what you got to do. Like if you want to be the best, this is what you got to do. And to me, the idea of being servant of all is it's saying yes to as many opportunities to serve more people as I can. So like what I'm doing now, I'm absolutely serving far more people than maybe what my little tiny dreams were at the very beginning of what I thought I was going to do with my life. Like now, you know, I can wake up every morning and realize like the decisions I make today could potentially impact thousands of my neighbors.
Yeah.
Versus where like previously maybe some of my like dreams of, you know, playing music or whatever, it's like, I don't know. Like I just don't know how to measure that. Like how long that would take me to really impact people's lives. So I think it's just so important to look for opportunities to impact more and more people, and you know follow the leading of the Lord as you're doing that. So
yeah, and I know same kind of scenario where like your dreams change. You know, they evolve and they grow. I think it's so important to have that kind of mentality where you say, this is where I'm aiming for. Because if you don't have an aim, you're not going to go anywhere.
Yep.
But also saying, but also I have an open hand. You know, it's kind of like holding it out like this instead of like either gripping on or just like, will it stick? And it's like, no, of course it's going to fall out if you're not holding it.
Yep.
Like you have to hold on to it for it to be, you know, to keep it. But yeah, just that it's so important to hold it with an open hand and to say, hey, because I'm sure you still love doing music stuff. You know, the reason you came here was to do, you know, 24-hour a day, 7 days a week. Like that's like the whole Burn 24/7 thing. Like that ministry, that's their goal. And so that was kind of what you were getting into.
Yep.
But now you're
I kind of like laugh
totally
now because like
place.
some people they don't even know that part about me. You know? Like, you know, I'm like, oh yeah, I was a worship pastor for years before I came to Harrisburg. And like, they're like, wait, you play music? I thought you just pick up trash all the time. Like they literally have no clue, you know? And, you know, to some people that would feel like, oh, I like lost a part of my identity or whatever. It's like, to me, like there's really, like you can't quantify it as a sacrifice because to me, it's just like, I'm doing what I know I'm called to do. Like I've never truly felt like, man, I'm so sad because I'm not playing music anymore. It's like, I play music. Even like my own girls, they kind of just like laugh. Like they don't even know that. Like I'll make up like goofy little songs with them at our house, and we'll do all sorts of funny things. And I'm like, my kids have no idea like that. This is such like a huge part of my life, and I'm not like sad about that. I'm just like, well, I love that you know me for who I am now because it is the truth. Like, things have changed, and it doesn't make me any more or any less. It just makes me me.
Yeah, that's so awesome. How's this length looking for you on top?
Yeah, it looks good.
Good length?
Yeah.
So kind of finishing up the haircut, I'll show you real quick to make sure we're on the right track. But kind of a finishing up the conversation before I get to your beard. How's that look?
Nice.
Good length?
Nice, yeah. Yeah, that looks great. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So kind of finishing up the conversation, what is one way you would encourage someone who feels like, man, my dream? Well, talk to two people.
Sure.
Talk to the person who has a dream that's been kind of crushed by other people. How would you encourage them to find the right people? And also talk to the person who feels like, man, I'm just kind of going through life and I feel like my dream's pretty simple. What do you think about that person's place?
Yeah, well, so to the first person, I mean, wine comes from the crushing of the grapes. So, you know, do you want to make grape juice or do you want to make wine? You know, and I guess like what I would say is if you want that season of pain to end, then learn. Like, because the longer that you convince yourself that you didn't do anything wrong or that those people are just idiots and they have nothing of value to add, then you're going to stay in a place of pain and disillusionment, and you're probably not going to do the thing that you want to do. Yeah. So, you know, sometimes I think that people come into our lives like that as a test, because like our visions need to be tested, our dreams need to be tested. Otherwise, they're frail and fragile. And the worst thing you want to do is succeed before you should be successful. Yeah. Because then you like then you're just going to oversee a failing empire, and you don't want to do that, like, so take every challenge as like a gift. Like, man, that sucked, but I'm glad I have an opportunity to learn and to grow from that. So that's what I would say to the individual who feels like you've been crushed. It's like, it's up to you how long you want to stay there, and I don't want to be overly harsh, but I'm the guy who's kind of like, so just call it for what it is. Say that it sucked. Say that you got your feelings hurt. Say that those people are, like whatever you got to do, like let it out and then just move on, because that's the only way you get forward from there. And to somebody who feels like just kind of stuck, or maybe you feel like you're not really connected to dreams, like the idea of that language almost kind of offends you. Like, oh, I have to be like chasing something, and you almost kind of feel condemned by, a conversation about dreams. I would just say that, like, pause and ask yourself, like, or maybe say this, like, I want to highlight the importance of staying connected to dreams. Is that's where we find like our center in joy. And if you're not pursuing something, and you're not chasing something down or taking hold of something, then you're losing the opportunity to just enjoy life. And so sometimes dreams is not like, I want to start my own business, or I want to, build an orphanage, or like, like I think sometimes we get disillusioned by the word dream because we think it has to be some world-changing thing. I think that honestly, our world could benefit from more dreamers who are like, I want to have a healthy family.
Yeah.
Or I want to get in shape. Yeah. Or, I just want to be a nice person. And for some of us, I think if we were honest with ourselves, those dreams probably feel harder than like starting a business.
For sure.
It's like, I want to lose 30 pounds and, and get in shape. It's like, oh, there's no way,
Yeah, we'll just start a business. It's easier.
I'll be the first person to say starting a business is probably easier. So, I say that to say that, like, don't diminish things, or even I would say like, over mystify, like what a dream is. I think a dream is as simple as a goal that you think is going to take a measure of sacrifice and effort in order to attain. And it also, once you accomplish it, like there's going to be joy. And that, like, when I'm living inside of that vision I'm seeing, like I'm a new or a better or a different, more whole person. And I think that that's ultimately what it is. So I think the idea of somebody being stuck, or you're like, I'm not really passionate about anything, I would just challenge you to say, don't lie to yourself, because you absolutely are.
Yeah.
And, what are you afraid of? Like, what's keeping you from taking the risk to do anything, or even saying it out loud? This is like what I would absolutely say to anybody who's wanting to dream more, is I think the number one dream killer is our overall lack of vulnerability with our dreams. And sometimes we're not even vulnerable to ourselves when it comes to dreaming. And what I mean by that is, I challenge anyone and everyone that I meet who is like, oh, I have all these big dreams. I can find out how much of a dreamer they really are, like truthfully, when I ask, how many of them have you written down?
Yeah.
Because we all feel accountable when something's in writing.
Yep.
And you can talk to me all day. Like, you can pie in the sky, give me the biggest, craziest dreams, but if you haven't written any of them down, I'm sorry, you're a fraud. Like, you're like you're afraid to dream. Like, you're afraid to really let yourself feel the excitement, potential loss, pain, and disappointment of those things not coming true if you don't even want to write it down. So I would say, regardless of where you are, if you've been crushed, if you're stuck, or if you think you're the biggest dream in the world, you need to write those dreams down. And that's how you steward your own heart. That's how you steward joy. That's how you steward passions and opportunities. And sometimes your dreams are just about getting other people to dream too. Like, I can't tell you how many dreams I've had that I've written down. And I don't mean like dreams in the night. There's those too. But like dreams, wishes, aspirations, passions, hopes, and desires that I've had where I wrote them down. And then I met somebody and I'm like, man, maybe my dream was just to keep this thing alive, because whenever I met you, I realized this is your dream and I want to support you in that, because I feel connected to it now, because I let myself dream.
That's really good.
So would I ever dream to be a barber? No, but I met you and it was your dream. And I know that I have a dream to see people living in joy and pursuing their dreams, which is why I get excited to hang out with you. It's like, you're doing exactly what I dream for people to do. So.
That's so good. Hey, thanks for coming out here, Tannon.
Yeah, man.
This has been great.
Thanks for the haircut.
Sweet.
Thanks for making me look, presentable again.
I'll show you the finished product. Is that looking for you?
Nice.
Sounds good, man.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.